Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves to dress up in a costume and walk around his house and then go to bed. Frank, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. I'm wearing the best costume of all. My birthday suit.
Love. Oh. Oh, yeah, been meaning to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Don't stand up.
Oh, you don't like it when the camera gets a
Gets a big old
brooch
whiff.
full of Frank.
Yeah. Ew. Not or good on you. Like, what a weird way to start this episode.
Well, I knew that was going to happen 17
Just
minutes
in
before
your
it
face.
happened. I experienced it all at the same time. So,
Oh, very good. Very good. Frank, what are you drinking?
I am enjoying a good old Sam Adams Cold Snap
Ooh, solid.
because
Really
tis the
solid.
season.
Tis the season for the cold snap. La 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 la. Ooh, good. I am drinking a Sierra Nevada Celebration,
Ooh,
which is also kind of tis the season. You know, they say, we first brewed Celebration IPA in the winter of 1981.
oh, that's
Each
cool.
year, we use only the first fresh hops of the growing season to create this complex and robust ale. Layered pine and citrus hop and aromas balanced delicately against rich malt sweetness to shape this bold wintertime classic. It's
I mean,
excellent.
I'm sold.
Have you not had this? Have you never had Celebration?
I don't remember, honestly. It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure if I've actually tried it. Sounds great, though.
Yeah, would strongly recommend. It is excellent. It's so good. Anyway, Frank, you know what else was so good?
Tell me.
HBO's Watchmen. So
Dude.
good.
Yes.
So
yes,
good.
it was.
Intense television.
It was
So
intense
intense.
television. Okay. Where to begin? I had heard there was a Watchmen series coming, a year ago, whenever they announced it, right? And didn't quite know what to expect. I actually made a point of not reading too much about it so that I wouldn't know what time frame it was set in, whether it was just a straight up adaptation of the book or what. Like, I didn't know. I think I had heard it was either before or after, but not actually an adaptation. I couldn't remember if it was like a before Watchmen, like the comic. I didn't know. So seeing that it was more of a sequel, I was curious whether it would be more reliant on the comic as source material or the film. I have a mixed feelings relationship about Damon Lindelof's style of storytelling.
Uh-huh. Yeah, many people do. You are not alone there.
I was not the biggest fan of The Leftovers.
No, well, sometimes you just like a fresh meal, Frank. I mean, leftovers are great for like lunch the next day, but on your fourth day, like cook something new.
Just because you don't have kids doesn't mean you can't be a dad.
I know, that's what science tells me. I got a double dad joke
got
in
him.
there.
But honestly, like I wasn't the biggest fan of The Leftovers, so I was a little nervous going into this show. But and I'll be honest, the first couple episodes, I was not that jazzed about it.
Really? Of Watchmen?
Of Watchmen.
Really?
I was not super feeling it the first couple of episodes, but I really wanted to push through and keep going regardless. And as a whole, as a unit, fantastic.
I
loved it.
Go ahead.
As a unit.
So when spoilers for Watchmen, when did that moment shift for you? When were you all of a sudden like, now I'm on board?
Pretty late in the game.
Really interesting.
Pretty late in the game. The first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm going to look more. I'm going to do a look up here and take a peek at the episode list just to refresh my memory. But the first thing that comes to my mind is the black and white episode.
So when she takes the memory pills.
Yeah, which I think was episode like 6 out of 9.
So you're talking
kind of late,
really late,
pretty
in the
late,
game.
pretty late. Yeah, I need to. Yeah, there were definitely things throughout that intrigued me, and there were things from the beginning that intrigued me. But when I really started to feel like I was watching it all come together was kind of late, and maybe that's on me. Maybe I'm kind of slow at how these things progress, and I maybe it says more about my ability to piece these things together than anything else. But it was around there that I was like, all right, now I understand how these things are all connected, and I'm like invested in seeing it go forward.
Okay.
It was definitely near the end.
Good. I think. Did you feel that way about the Watchmen book when you first read it?
I remember issue 4, which I think is the one where he's on Mars and he's like, "It's 1985. I'm doing this. It's 1953. I'm doing this." Blah, blah, blah. Like it's that issue.
Wow, that's issue 4.
I think so.
Wow.
For some reason, 4 sticks out in my mind.
I don't have a frame of reference, so I'm not sure.
The graphic novel is too far away for me to reach it right now.
Me too.
So, yeah,
Mr. Fantastic
it's right
Powers,
there,
now
right
would be a good time to manifest yourself.
Honestly, yes. But I'm fairly certain it's issue 4. So out of 12. So a lot earlier in that run for me where I felt invested. But yeah, for the show it sort of took me a little and here's what I think it is. What they did really, really well in retrospect is each character kind of got an episode where they were sort of the central character of each. And it wasn't until we had gone through that for a bit that I started to realize how all the stories connected together. But it was that black and white episode. It was the memory pills that really did it for me.
Interesting.
Were you bought in from the start?
Oh, I was all in from the start. I was 100%. I was 100% on board from the Tulsa riots, and I was like, "Wow, this is really intense way to start some television." Like but I could even right at the beginning when the little kid we learn it is Hooded Justice, is like watching this thing on TV or in the movie theater. He's watching this, and you too can protect the law and all that stuff. I was like, oh, I know where this is going. I like sense it. I feel goodness about this because right off the bat they're telling me subtext, they're telling me layers, they're telling me these things, and then you go outside and it's the Tulsa riots, and yeah, I was on board.
Yeah,
because it felt like Watchmen. There's an intangible quality to Watchmen in the way that there's an intangible quality to Star Wars. There's a feeling. And the show managed to capture that feeling, and I think, that feeling might be slow burn, like an intense slow burn, and that is hard to achieve. And I think I was Here's the thing, I don't know if I would be as invested if I was not a fan of the material in the first place. Like I know people who watched it who have never read the book and thought it was spectacular.
Interesting. So I was curious about that.
And they seem to be able to follow it just fine. But I felt like the Ozymandias stuff would be very difficult to follow if you didn't know who he was, what he was about.
I would
all
think.
Of a sudden there's a giant squid in the middle of New York.
Right. Like what did they make of the squid stuff? Because they didn't really explain that in the show. I mean, they kind of did. They alluded to it, but they didn't really explain why a squid or any of that,
Well, the book doesn't really explain why a squid either. It just happens to be like I chose a squid for the reasons, because it would be cool to draw and then to render in a computer later on. People who I know who only watched the show said, yeah, I loved it. And the squid was weird, but I was on board for it. And I said, okay, interesting. That's how I felt as well. So, I think the show, I alluded to the subtext, but I think the show builds upon itself very nicely. So, like, you have Angela Abar, you have Regina King, the Queen.
She's fantastic.
She's so good,
So
good. And so she is a character. She plays Sister Knight, vigilante, superhero, whatever. She's black. She puts on black face to go out and fight crime.
Right.
So she's like hiding her identity through in some ways fight a racist organization by wearing a symbol of racism.
Yeah.
To conceal her own identity. It's things like that you're like, you just like sit there and think about all those mixed layers. But then you learn that her grandfather, Hooded Justice, the first superhero, puts on white face to be the first superhero to rally other superheroes who are white, but he's like, there's stuff like that, and he's also battling racism, and like it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes. It's really, really smart that way. It has thought through all of its pieces.
Yeah.
Actually, I will say it's mostly thought through all of its pieces.
I think so. It's thought it through, and also, like, there are so many things that pay off. There are lots of things that are set up early on and then pay off later, which is a thing that I did not feel with The Leftovers. I feel like a lot of things were set up and then never paid off, and I think that was done intentionally in that show. But it left me very frustrated and agitated. And with this show, I was very satisfied. In fact, it's so good at paying off those things that I almost feel like if they didn't do another season, I'd be okay. Like, I would like more, but I'd be okay. It's so self-encapsulated and self-sufficient that I don't necessarily need another season.
That's because it was built that way. Lindelof said they did one season. The plan was to do just one because that's the story that was to be told.
Yeah.
And he said, if I don't have a good story, I'm not doing a second season.
I admire that so much. I wish more creators did it that way. And I guess it's hard to do on a platform other than like an HBO.
Right.
But,
and when you want to, have food on your plate.
For sure. He doesn't have to worry about that, but others do. I think HBO, because it was so well received, I think HBO is going to do another one, whether he's involved or not, or whether he's just, producing, taking a more backseat role or whatever. I think there will be more.
Well, wouldn't it be so interesting to have Watchmen be almost a creative anthology series, where
That would be really cool.
you bring on a new showrunner, and what does this showrunner have to say about this universe? It doesn't have to be a sequel. It could be a prequel. It could be 100 years in the future. It could be, it could be adjacent to this story, what's happening on the other side of town or across the world, or it could be any of these things.
I think that's a really cool concept, and I would love to see that. I do think it's a little risky, though, because I think Lindelof has shown that he has a
he has an understanding.
Yeah.
He has an understanding of Watchmen.
Yeah.
In that not everybody gets, and he knows that, but he's coming at Watchmen from a place of reverence, and you can see it, in the way that he treats even some of the parts of the production design, like Ozymandias' costume is just Ozymandias. There's no flair about it outside of this is what he looked like on the page, this is what he looks like in real life. Flat out, this is it.
It's there it is.
Yeah. And that's for all of that. Anybody who comes remarkably close to looking like that character. You get Dr. Manhattan. You have Archie. You have Night Owl's ship. That's it. That's Archie. It doesn't look like anything different than what it is.
It's just straight up. It is what it is. I love that.
I do too. And maybe another show run. Like you could run the risk of say like a True Detective, where you're like, ooh, that first season was solid, but whoo, boy, that second season, oh no. But you could run that risk with Lindelof too.
That's true.
If he ends up doing a story he's not fond of, that's how these things crumble pretty quickly. And I think the story tells the story it needs to tell, and so even though it ends kind of on a cliffhanger, Angela basically has the abilities of Dr. Manhattan, we think.
I think it's pretty strongly implied.
It's pretty strongly implied that a show that starts with the hate and victimization of African Americans ends with an African American becoming a god.
Yeah.
Like there's a real follow through on that you like. Where do you go from there? What story are you trying to tell next? There was a lot of talk online, as there always is. People saying like, "Oh, Watchmen is too political," and I'm gonna be like, "Did you have read Watchmen?"
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm sorry, it was extremely political to begin with.
Right. The whole thing is political. It's a gut reaction to Thatcher's England.
Yes,
That's what Watchmen and V for Vendetta.
Yes,
that's what that is.
Nixon may be president in that book,
Reagan,
but
right?
It's way more about Thatcher it's way more about the UK than it is about the US. It's way more about the political situation in the UK in the 80s than it is about anything really regarding the US. That's what Alan Moore is really pretty nakedly trying to say. Like, he's not really even sugarcoating it.
Right. But I guess if you don't know the political climate of the UK in the 80s...
And we're so far removed from it now that it's hard for people to remember that or realize that.
Sure. But I think that's the power of the story, and part of the importance of Watchmen in the first place as a comic is that it was commenting on the real world.
It's political.
Comics didn't do that. They just didn't. They were a world unto themselves. And then along comes Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, and they're like, boom, let's get out our political anger inside a comic book.
I mean, it was revolutionary for that reason, among others. But like that's why it's on New York Times like lists of most important books, right? Like because of what it meant for that medium.
Exactly. And so like I really I really like the Zack Snyder film because it is basically a page by page with very few changes version of the story, but it's apolitical.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. It is a out and out action adventure story.
Yes,
that happens to include these characters, which misses the point.
Yeah, I agree.
It really misses the point of Watchmen, and I think the HBO show absolutely understands what Watchmen is.
I think so too.
It's a political show with super characters inside of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think, and I think that's something that Lindelof really nails in the way that he does it, and in the it's I think more approachable than Alan Moore's storytelling style. I think that it's kind of I mean to me anyway.
I think it's more approachable than Alan Moore.
I mean, yeah, I think so too. And Alan Moore will never see that, but
nope.
but you know what?
Alan
honestly,
Moore will never listen to this podcast.
Well, he'll never hear this podcast, but he'll never see the show either. I don't think. But I wish
he
would.
watches all of them. I think he watches them.
I don't think he does. I don't think he's seen the movie. I don't think he should. I don't think he should see the movie, but I think he should watch this.
Oh, I think you'd be like, look, this is not really your work. This is something that is inspired by you.
Yeah, and I think it gets the point, or at least demonstrates his points better than the movie did.
Yes, I absolutely agree. What do you think the point is? What is the show? Because I think the show starts. Well, here's the thing. I think the show starts strong. It has a really strong beginning for me. It has a stronger ending for you, which I think is nice because we both get something out of this. I think it starts strong in its political leaning.
Yes,
and it does slowly become, over the course of the show, this action adventure.
Yes. It becomes like full on sci-fi by the end, right? Like by the time we're in the finale, and they got the cavalry's got the chamber to trap Dr. Manhattan, and she's got the clock, and they've got the whole thing going, and she literally transports them to her facility. By the way, like literal like it becomes full on like hard sci-fi by the end.
Yes.
But what is the point? I'm not good at distilling down any sort of like these stories, like Alan Moore's style of storytelling. I find it hard to distill it down to just one point because I don't know that it's trying to say just one thing. Like, is there one moral to this story? I don't know that there is just one moral to the story.
No, I agree with you. This show is just as much about racism as it is about the victimization of structures, not even just people, but structures. Like it's talking about police and politics and
yes, absolutely, but also like anti-imperialism, right? With like Vietnam becoming the 51st state and what the implications of that look like. Also, just like the mad power.
I was gonna say poor Puerto Rico. Like it's like
yeah,
forever,
really,
forever a territory.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. But then like it's the whole thing of Lady True wanting that power, that level of Dr. Manhattan power, and clearly not being fit for it, right? Like the absolute power corrupting absolutely, and she doesn't even have it yet, and it's already corrupting her. Like there are so many lessons that it's trying to teach. It's hard to distill it down to one, and that's kind of what makes it so complex and interesting.
I agree. Here's the thing. You mentioned Lady True, that she was the component that I felt was lacking in the story.
You know why that is? Because she didn't get her own episode.
Oh, maybe that's it. Because I was very unclear about like what is it you want exactly.
I read somewhere that there were supposed to it was going to be a 10-episode run, and instead they did 9. And I feel like if they had done 10 and given us a Lady True centric episode, they gave us her story sort of in chunks throughout.
Sure,
but
like
there wasn't
a reveal of
her,
like her mother and all this stuff is very powerful.
Yes,
and but I think I didn't feel as connected to her as anybody else, and I think you're right. She doesn't have her own episode.
Didn't get her own episode. Yeah.
Although some characters did get their own episodes and then disappeared. Like Looking Glass's episode was awesome. It was
so
great.
Good.
It was so good. And then what happened to him? You know what I mean? Then he's just like there to watch,
so that he could reappear. That was so he could reappear in the finale and sort of save the day.
That's true. Fun fact about Looking Glass. Get this: his mask CGI.
No.
I watched it behind the scenes, like the CGI of HBO's Watchmen. There's a little like 2-minute like clip of like all that stuff. His actor on set, whether it be the stuntman or the stand-in or Blake T. Nelson, it was either a gray or green pullover mask with eye holes, and that reflective effect is completely computer generated.
That's absolutely insane.
Isn't that insane? You you look at it and you're like, I know what that material feels like. I feel like I can touch it. Like I know what that is. Insane.
Wow.
Insane.
That's crazy. I love that.
Did you find it?
I would not. No, I can't find it. But
okay,
I'll
try.
I'll find it. Yeah, but that's nuts, and I love that. I love that. That's would not have guessed that. Wow.
It's like as mind blowing as finding out that Angela is married to Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, that was a great reveal.
It was a really strong reveal.
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming. They really had me hook line with the he's on Mars, whatever else. But I love that the show is told in the way that Dr. Manhattan experiences time.
Yeah.
It's not a linear story. It's told as everything happens at once. That's what I mean. It's just really, really smart. And it presents itself in a way that it doesn't pander to its audience, and I appreciate that too, where I watch that and I say, this would be hard to follow if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
If you're not good at paying attention,
yeah,
it's hard to follow.
Yeah, it could be. It absolutely could be.
And that's okay. This is for people who are looking for smart television.
Yes, it is.
And I think it's a wonderful example of smart television in a way that maybe like people got psyched out with Game of Thrones or something like that. People say, "Oh, smart television, Game of Thrones." Like, it's very well done, high production value, wonderfully acted, good stories, great cinematography. Watchmen is smart.
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thrones tricks you. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference in those narratives, and man, I was really taken with Watchmen. It's really, I'm like I'll get to it kind of television watcher. Like, I don't have to watch the episode as soon as it airs kind of thing. Watchmen I had to watch at 9:00 on Sunday, no exception.
So I didn't do that. I watched the first couple the week that they came out, and then time got away from me, and I had to watch I binged the last 7 episodes, and I enjoyed them way more, I think, because I binged them personally. I feel the same way about Watchmen as a graphic novel too. I never had I was not born yet when it came out, right? So I only was able to read it as a collected work, and I'm glad I did, because I feel like when we talked about Doomsday Clock, I feel like I would have benefited from binge reading that, more than I did by reading it, as the new issues came out, especially because the book was late and there were big gaps. But I feel like for me, a story like that is more complex and has more self-referential pieces and relies on you to remember something. In chapter 9, you have to remember something from chapter 2. For me, it works better when I'm binging it, because it's all fresh in my mind, and I don't have to recall something that I read 18 months ago.
Yeah.
So binging the show really, I think, helped my enjoyment of it in a big way.
That's good. I would like to go back and rewatch The Hopeful Dreams of an Adult.
Yes.
I'll rewatch it someday when
we all
I
say
die.
these things. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I would love to, but I liked watching it and water cooling talk it.
Sure.
That's not a word, that it's not a correct way to say that, but I don't care. You know what I meant? Like,
Bubbla.
I had a bubbla talk. I have a friend that watched it every week, just like I did. So I saw him on Mondays, and we were like, okay, what do we think about this? How's this going? What do we think? Where's this go? And I missed that in television. I guess the only show that is really kind of like that recently, for the world, or at least for America, was Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you could say maybe The Mandalorian, but Game of Thrones is probably the one that's
wider appeal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, biggest equivalent. And I wished Watchmen caught on that way, for people, because I think there's something to offer everybody, and it's important. And Regina King is just so good. I was floored. Everybody's great. We didn't talk really about Ozymandias and his weirdness.
That was like the Tales of the Black Freighter of this show.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, what is happening? I don't really know how this connects. I know it's gonna, but I don't really see how it connects yet.
Yep.
And especially not knowing that he was on Europa or any of that until we saw him get transported to Europa, or whenever they revealed that. Yeah, that was seeing all that stuff, right? And seeing him harvesting babies out of the water and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And especially at the first time we see him, when he just kills that guy on stage during the play, and the horseshoe coming back time after time, all these different things. What does any of this mean? The game warden, all these things what could any of it possibly mean? And then it all connects. It all makes sense. It was one of those things that I was nervous that it was going to be like The Leftovers, where they just left threads just to daunt them in your face, just to be like, here you go. Here's things that we're just never going to resolve. Just it's nonsense for nonsense's sake. At least that's how it felt to me. Sorry, don't write me angry emails. I didn't care for The Leftovers. And yet this show, I felt like they laid all those breadcrumbs out, and then it all meant something. Everything meant something. Even the freaking horseshoe. The horseshoe coming back time after time and being like, why are there horseshoes? And then it's finally because these, whatever you want to call them, the Crookshanks and Mr. What's-His-Face, were
Mr. Ichabod Crane from Sleepy Hollow.
They knew that they were supposed to give him a horseshoe to get out, so he could dig his Phillips.
Mr. Phillips.
Phillips and Crookshanks knew that he needed the horseshoe, and they kept giving them to him at the wrong times. And then finally, it was the right time.
That is, I did not pick up on that. I missed that.
That was how he dug his way out.
Oh, I got that, but I didn't understand. I forgot the horseshoe every time.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
This is where binging it was more helpful.
See, yeah. I also love
Good stuff.
Side note, I love that there was an episode titled that was A God Walks Into a Bar, but it was A God Walks Into a Bar.
A bar. You're the first person to appreciate that like I appreciate that.
I love that. I love that.
It was very good. My one sadness with this show, my real one sadness, because this actually ties into Doomsday Clock. In 2019, I got 2 Watchmen sequels.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah.
What a world. Synergy, baby.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff. I liked that. Where the heck was Night Owl in both of them?
I know, man. I know.
Both of them. Like, it actually really kind of bugged me because I'm like, Night Owl's the best. He's just trying to do the right thing all the time. He's us. Night Owl is more like your average comic book geek reader than any other character. He's just
Season
a guy.
2?
Yeah, maybe. But I was like, oh, I miss Dan.
Where'd they say he was? Jail?
They never said. He
No.
might be dead.
I don't think he was dead. I thought they made a reference to him being in prison or something.
I don't
know.
No.
I don't know.
But oh well. Anyway, that's my big loss. So anyway, full wrap up. Watchmen, watch it. Who watches the Watchmen? You do. You watch the Watchmen.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And while you're doing that, also, check us out because we're cool. Because you can find us in all kinds of places, like beerwithgeeks.com and thoughtbubble.audio.com and patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio, and anywhere podcasts are found, like Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts is a great place to leave us ratings and reviews. Those mean a lot to us. So you can check us out there. You can email us at beerwithgeeks.com. Follow us at beerwithgeeks on Twitter. I'm at Frank Ramblings. Tim is at TimothyPG13. All sorts of places to find us.
I'm appropriate for everyone.
You are.
Yeah.
Unlike Watchmen.
Unlike Watchmen, which is not appropriate for everybody.
Nope.
Don't get confused by the costumes.
Keep the kids away.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah. All right, cool. Frank. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, my friend.
Indeed. So until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.